Welcome to the Vertical Go-to-Market Podcast, where you'll discover new opportunities to grow your business from 7 figures to 8 from the world's most successful agency and B2B SaaS executives. I'm your host, Corey Quinn. Let's jump into the show. Today, I'm joined by Ton Dobbe. Welcome, Ton.
Nice to be on the show. We're looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to it too. So could you share a little bit about yourself and the work you do with the audience?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you could call me a consultant. About 6 years ago, I started my own company, and it sort of became a mission for me to help B2B SaaS companies out there. What I saw is that a lot of B2B SaaS companies have fantastic products, but they struggle to stand out. So where I put all my energy is help them crystallize what makes them remarkable, then identify with them who's prepared to pay a premium for that and why. And then I help them with their positioning and their value proposition so that they can start to create what I call predictable traction, because that's at the end always the goal.
Beautiful. I love all of these topics. Definitely excited to have our conversation today. For context, I believe in previous conversations and just by being familiar with you and your background, before you started your consultancy, you were at a company called Unit 4. I think you came up through product marketing. Could you share with us a little bit about what Unit 4 is, as well as how you sort of went to market at that company with regard to verticalization?
Oh, that's a long story indeed. Yeah, I've been at 26 years. That's why I'm saying it's a long story. It's a long story.
I know it is. 26 years. That's amazing. One company.
But I mean, I've been doing every 3 years, I've been doing something else. And that at the end keeps it like I'm working for a new company every time again. But you're right. It started all in the Netherlands back in the 90s. Let's skip that. And did our IPO end of the 90s, started acquiring businesses. And at some point, we acquired a company from Norway called Aggresso. And that was a product that was like an ERP for the services industry. So they, like an ERP with finance and procurement and project management and HR and these type of things. And they sold it to central government, local government, education, professional services, not for profit, everyone that is delivering value through their people. That's how I got introduced to verticalization, because my initial work was always in the SMB market with a small and medium business ERP, and we sold it to everybody. When I got into the new world, my job turned international, and that's where we started to work with the mid-market and large organizations. And you can imagine, if you sell your suite to a professional service company that is, for example, building the palm tree in Dubai, like a large professional service company with all engineers, and the next day you're meeting a local authority in the area of Boston, it's totally different language. So that's how, the whole importance of verticalization kicked in.
So when you acquired that company, were they already organized in such a way that they had separate sort of people and resources targeting these different verticals, or is that something that came after the acquisition?
No. That was already in place. They were already, for example, in the UK, they had a pretty good traction with local government and with education. And there was also a unit that was focused specifically on professional services industry, typically the management consultants, the engineering consultants, and so on. But for example, in Norway, they had, almost 95% market share in central government, around 80 or 90% in local government, a lot of not-for-profits. So for every country we had, there were different sweet spots in different vertical markets, and there were also dedicated teams going for those markets. Because you cannot, if you're a salesperson and you need to demo and you got a pre-sales person coming with you, you need to speak the language of that industry. The product wasn't verticalized though.
Okay, so that's interesting. The sales and marketing approach was verticalized and localized,
absolutely,
potentially. But then but regardless whether you were a government or education or other verticals, they would effectively get the same product.
They would get at the end, you buy an ERP, you buy the finance, you buy procurement and the payroll, the HR and so on. But they were all then, the product was extremely flexible. Yeah, it was implemented according to the habits and the language that was used in that particular vertical, in that particular country as well, because it's also very often different, apart from language, it's also very different country to country.
Interesting.
And the interesting thing was, for example, in the UK, we had, there's about 120 universities. with that product, we had about 80 of them as a customer. And we didn't have anything to do with their core business, which is student management and the learning practice. We just did their finance.
Hmm.
Yeah. And we started with the biggest ones, which is also an interesting thing. Normally you think, okay, we start with a small one and then we do another one, then we get some traction and we start growing up. They turn it completely upside down. They start with the largest universities out there because of the differentiation that the product brought across,
Hmm.
which was its whole project accounting capabilities. And that was extremely valuable for organizations that, for example, in education organizations that did research. For example, Nottingham University and Cambridge and Oxford, these type of organizations, they have all do, of course, that they do study, they help people study and yeah, get their grades. But on the other hand, they also have big research arms. That became our sweet spot there. So it was a very interesting way of going to market.
It is. And so at that time, you had acquired this company. They had this sort of vertical go to market approach with these different teams who were specialists in government or universities, education, these
Yeah.
different things. How did that evolve over time after the acquisition? And how are you involved in that process?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. Um, Initially, we just kept going, and we kept. I mean, I started to kind of own the whole product marketing side of things, and we started to tune our messaging towards these vertical markets. And I remember very well, I was in Boston at some point in time. It's also, I mean, I wrote in my book. I'm referring to that conversation on page number 1, I guess,
Mhm.
which was more of an eye opener for me when it comes to like the art of positioning and the art of kind of creating a value proposition that resonates. I was briefing an industry analyst from technology evaluation services, Predrag Jakavrovic. And after about half an hour into that, and I was in the Marriott in Boston, we were sitting there and going through my slide deck. And at some point he said, okay, time out. Because there's definitely something that is super different about your product, but you got a very strange way of talking about it. So So I think I understand what you get, and that is I understand why this is really important. Get some help. So that's where we started to really hone in on yeah, on positioning and value proposition work, and I did hire an external consultant for
Mhm.
that opened my eyes in a number of ways,
Yeah.
and that's where, yeah, I mean, things started to flow from there in a completely different and accelerated from there in a completely different way, and it really became clear to me that yes, we had a horizontal product and we were selling that across various vertical markets. And we also realized that we were not the best solution for everybody in that market. We were not the best solution, except in, well, you could say different for Norway and for Sweden, where they had 90% market share in certain verticals, but that were more government deals. You start to realize, okay, now that we've repositioned and now that we got it crystal clear, what makes us remarkable, and we did this study and we started to interview customers and we interviewed 10 of this customer and 10 there. And then 10 of them said, I love it because it's so flexible. And the other were like, yeah, well, I wouldn't say we hate it, but it's so flexible. It's like, we wish we had something more standard. And then was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because they were using the same product, and from
Yeah.
the outside, they were exactly the same in terms of how big they were, how much revenue they had, what type of services they were doing. Just a totally different reaction. And that's where we started to figure out, okay, hey, wait a minute, there's something about this product that one group loves, and why do they love it? And why is that important? And the other group doesn't. And that helped us with really narrowing down the segmentation. Like you say, like I said in the beginning, what makes us remarkable and who's prepared to pay premium for that.
Mhm.
And from there onwards, once we nailed that, we started winning 8 out of 10 deals. And we had competitors uh, qualifying out when we were in the deal. Competitors we were heavily impressed with or intimidated with before that. And
Okay. This
that's
is
where I sort of got the fever
yeah.
for
Yeah.
this business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got that fever too. Which is awesome. So let me try and recast this and help me make sure. Let me know if I didn't get this or if I did get this right. So you have this sort of horizontal product. You had these vertical markets. Did you did you find that you needed to create differentiation and unique positioning at the vertical level in
Yeah.
addition to the global
Yes and
brand?
no. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
say more.
that's it's, I mean, you of course you have to speak the language, because in budget in local government when you talk about profit, they look at you as like you're crazy. We don't have profits. We have a budget, and we have to
Yeah,
keep within the budget. We
yeah,
cannot overspend there.
right.
So that's language, and of course there's all kind of other language that's verticalized.
Mm.
What we found, and that is, yeah, I mean, I should have said it in my story, is that we were, yes, going after various vertical markets, but we realized we are not, maybe not the best for everybody in there, but there's a slide in there whereby the characteristics of those businesses, whether it's local government or professional service company or not for profit or an education, a university, where they share similar type of characteristics that are made for this product.
Interesting. So
And
you were
that's
able to
where we
go,
started. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And
Okay.
that was about change. These were all organizations that were taking change as something good, something to, um, yeah, to really embrace and do something with, to stand out in their marketplace.
Mm.
The organizations that hated change, yeah, they wanted to go. Well, they wanted to have something that was out of the box, implement it, don't change it. Well, you can't change it anyway, so that didn't matter. But the ones that did, we had a huge advantage. And but we figured out at some point that you could almost send a local government for a reference visit to a professional service company, and they would speak the same language
So in
because
other
they
words, yeah. So in other words, you positioned based on that common shared problem
exactly,
or pain
yeah,
point
yeah,
or initiative. So regardless of whether they were government, education, universities, that was sort of where you started, but you ended
yeah,
up was businesses that had a focus on change were going to be the ones that are going to be the best suited for the benefits of your product.
exactly, yeah. We actually made an acronym for it, or the consultants that work with us, Judith Rothrock, she 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 labeled it blink. Businesses living in change. If you blink your eyes, their world has changed. And we
Great,
all think about, for example, local government
love
as, yeah,
that.
but I mean these people don't change.
Mm.
Well, my God, these organizations are, it's neither, well, it's ongoing, because they have so many services. You know, some of these local authorities have 50 services. Whether you're a local authority of 8,000 inhabitants or 80,000, and I have actually been interviewing two local authorities next to each other, Stockholm and a smaller town, I forgot the name of that, like 80,000 versus, or 800,000 versus 8,000 citizens. Exactly the same type of portfolio
Mm.
in terms of the services that they provide to their people. And they have to just do it within the budget, and they have to be clever with it. And it's constantly tuning, and because it's about people, I mean, if they have to adjust things, for example, if they have to lower cost, they cannot say like like a production company, we just lower our stock, we just buy less products, or we dump our stock so that we get rid of it. No, you're dealing with people here. You cannot say this week I need 800 people and next week I need 400 and then I need 6,000. It doesn't work like that. So it's really yeah, miniature change every single day.
Was the blink in the positioning around change and um that whole positioning, was that differentiated relative to the other people who you
Oh
were
yes,
going up against? What were
yeah,
how were they
exactly.
positioning themselves?
Not that, because they were, that was their weak spot. SAP, I mean, the companies, I mean, I have full respect for our competitors always. And that's also what I'm doing with my current work. I'm always trying to look at the competition with respect,
Yeah.
because the people that buy those products are not stupid. A lot of times you think, oh, yeah, well, they're stupid because they don't buy our products. No, have respect for that and start thinking about, have empathy. What do they want that they don't see in you, but they see it in them? So, for example, people that buy SAP, they don't buy it for making change. They buy it for getting control, for top-down initiatives, for being super process-oriented. That's what the product is perfect for. And but yeah, the moment you need, I mean, I had customers that I was talking to a CFO at some point in time at a very large IT service company in Belgium. And after 1.5 hours, he said, "Okay, let's we couldn't find a good example, or um, and it was because they're doing so much change. And he said we there was a governmental change about rental cars, no, company cars, and there were going to be an additional tax on that. Um, so everybody in the company was impacted by that because they all had company cars. So everybody was moaning about it. We have to pay more tax, and he said, "Yeah, well, we realized, okay, we have to capture a little bit more information. We have to change the process here and there, and we have to create reports for the employee, for our business, and for the government." He said, "But that just took 10 minutes. Is that what you mean?" I said, "That's what I mean." If you would have to do that with an SAP or an Oracle, and respect for them, you have to kind of bring a couple of consultants in there, and they have to make changes all over the place. For the right business, for manufacturing companies, perfect solution.
Yep.
For wholesale
Yep.
distribution, perfect solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
For companies living in change, not so good. At least in that era.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course. I think that's really powerful.
yeah,
And that kind of speaks to sort of the work that you do now in your consulting. You have a book that you
yeah.
put out, and you talk a lot about, and you teach about positioning and messaging and differentiation. Could you talk a little bit about this concept of predictable traction? You mentioned it in your book. What
Yeah.
is predictable traction?
It is the ability to keep growing in good and bad times. And when we get traction, I mean, typically everybody always think about startups. You build a product, and then you start to get the first customers, and the first 10, and then the first 100, and so on. So that the traction is building. The market is dynamic, and that's something that a lot of people forget. We just had COVID as a good example, and after COVID came an economy crisis, and then there was a war, and it had all kind of supply chain issues. So the customers we sell to and that buy our products are constantly in a in a flux of all kind of changes that they make themselves, like the aspirations that they're trying to achieve every single year, and the external pressure from the outside. So what their priorities are and the pain points are is always changing, and that's
Mm.
where when you talk about product market fit, it's almost like an illusion. There's always something else that needs to happen in order to keep the product market fit, and if you don't do that, that traction will some point stall. And then I'm not even talking about the fact that you also get new competitors, which are going to steal a little bit of business from you. Now, if in the ideal world, without any competitors, even then, it will stall. And that's what I'm talking about. First of all, okay, so what is the foundational things you have to get right? Then how do you get momentum, building momentum, traction momentum? And then how do you keep that momentum going? And that's the resilience part. So how do you
Okay.
ensure, you have the resourcefulness in the business to ensure that you can be ready and have the resources to be ready for the next thing.
Yeah. Could you share some ideas about how to design a business so that it
Oh
creates
yeah.
that, yeah, that predictable traction?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's I see it in three. I mean, in my book, I'm talking about three phases almost. The
Yeah.
first one in my book, I'm talking about the value lever. Then I'm talking about the viability lever, and then the last one is the volume lever. The viability and volume can actually be exchanged for each other. It's always start with the value lever. And in my work at these days, they call it the traction foundation. So what is it all about? The value of your company. I talked about it before. What makes you remarkable in the eyes of your customers? Because a lot of companies start thinking about, okay, well, what makes it remarkable is our user interface. It's so slick. I've never seen anything slicker than this. That's not what I mean. Customers couldn't care less. Um, so that is all about. What I typically go through is an exercise with my customers to, first of all, build what I call and I refer to, and there's an essay on my website on that, the segmentation cocktail. What is your ideal segmentation cocktail? So you think about, the margarita that you love or that cocktail that you love. There's all kind of ingredients in there. And what a lot of companies forget when they're doing the segmentation is to go beyond firmographics and demographics. What they say is, okay, it's a company of this size, 500 to 2,000 people in this region, and they do this for a business, and they have so much revenue, and blah, 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 blah. All the things that you can actually search for on LinkedIn. It's all good, but that's more or less, yeah, paving the outside boundaries of where you're going to look for companies.
Yeah.
Then you find 10,000. Well, I can guarantee you 9,000 will likely not buy from you.
Mm.
So where you want to focus is the 1,000 that do. And so what characterizes them? That's where you start to throw in all the ingredients. Like what are the dynamics that they live in? I mean, talking about that example earlier on, they live in change, for example. They do a lot of acquisitions. This heavily regulatory. So these are unique things for a certain group in that market that you can uniquely address. What are the risks they tolerate? What is, for example, non-negotiable for them? Is it quality? Is it speed? Is it reliability? Is it consistency? I mean, they have ideas around that. What do they secretly want? What do they value? What do they aspire? All of these things it's all people type thing. You cannot look for that on LinkedIn, but you can address it with your messaging. So if you understand that first, and ideally, that's of course where product market fit is really helpful, because then you have customers and you can see, okay, I've got 100 customers. These are the 20 I'd love to get 1,000 of. And this is a group they bought our solution and we needed the money in that period in time. If they would go to the competition, we would actually wave them goodbye. What is the difference between them, right?
Sure. Right.
And if you articulate that, that's where you create your segmentation cocktail. Well, once you've got that, then you can start to look with empathy. Okay, what are their unique problems? And also, like, what are the problems that others might have that they don't care about, and the other way around. So that's where you can start to hone in that. You create a long list of problems, 50 maybe. And then for each problem, I'm talking about it in my book, I'm talking about a triangle. And that's about 3 key questions to ask. How valuable is it to solve this? For every problem, you rank that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable is this to solve for them in their eyes? And how valuable is this, and this, and this? And then you can actually start sorting most valuable, least valuable. The second question is, how critical is it to solve it? Because if it's something is valuable but not critical, it's a nice to have. And you can try to sell and sell and sell, but they will continuously postpone the deal. Because not now, other priorities. And then the third question comes in, because now you have a combination of highly valuable and highly critical. If you have those 2 numbers, you can multiply them. And you end up with a number between 0 and 100. Focus on the one that are above 80. Then you start answering question, okay, and where can we, with our solution, exceed expectations? And that's where your remarkability comes in. Where do your customers say, oh my God, if you would take it away from me, I would scream. I would pay you double to please keep it here. So what are those things? And on my website, I'm talking about magic concepts. What are those magic concepts inside your solution? And the reason why I'm talking about that, because I don't want it to be a feature, because a competitor can then say, okay, positioning around that feature, I make a team of 20 developers available for 1 or 2 sprints, and we have it as well. Like, check. Now, it needs to be something that has sort of defensible differentiation. Ideally, so deep that if your competitor wants to match you there, they have to rebuild their whole solution. That is really where the power is. And once you understand that, that's where you have all the ammunition to start positioning yourself, create a value proposition that is irresistible for customers. You can start to take position. A lot of companies think they are positioned. That's another thing that I'm always ranting about. But they're not positioned. And what is happening then is that their competitors will position them exactly as they like, or your customers will put you in a position and you might not like that. So it's really important to take position and get over that hurdle of, but we might get excluded from a couple of deals.
What point in the business's life cycle is it important to do this work? Is it day one, or after they've got some product market fit, or somewhere down the road?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you have to. If you're just starting with your idea and you get your minimum remarkable product, I don't like to talk about minimum viable product, because minimum viable in a lot of people's eyes is, okay, it's the really bare minimum for something to actually run. Now it needs to be minimum remarkable. So you go deep on a certain number of things. That's where, I mean, you cannot even position yourself because you're testing things out. And at some point, customers say, I want this. And another one wants this. And do they want the same thing? Or do they want it? Does one want a little bit more or a little less? That's how you start to go towards product market fit. But you can already start to see, like, where does this resonate and what is this really all about? The ideal moment where positioning comes in is where you have product market fit, where you're sort of hitting, you should start growing faster, but you're hitting those ceilings
Yeah.
because it's not clear enough. Clarity is king at the end.
Clarity is king. I love that. I was just thinking
Yeah.
about Donald Miller's statement
Yeah,
earlier
exactly.
today, which is like, if you confuse, you lose.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I quote him in my book because I'm a big fan of Donald.
Me too. Me too. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Hey, it's Corey. Almost every day, I talk with agency owners who are frustrated with getting their outbound program off the ground. The truth is, too many agencies are too dependent on inbounds and referrals to grow their business. We all know that it's getting harder and harder to generate inbounds and that it's just not a sustainable way to grow your business. I'd like to give you the 6 secrets for driving consistent ROI from your outbound that I learned as Scorpion's Chief Marketing Officer, where we doubled the business from 20 million to 40 million just by adding outbound to an existing inbound only program. It's a free 6-day email course that will transform your outbound from broken to consistently driving new sales opportunities. You could sign up and get the first secret right now by going to getoutboundroi.com. That's getoutboundroi.com. Now, back to the show. Can you talk a little bit more? You mentioned about the segmentation. Like, how do you approach segmentation with a SaaS client?
Yeah. Like I said, I always start from the customer perspective. And initially, I start with the team internally. Okay, what do you know about the customer? And I ask it to the people that are. I mean, I'm doing what I call pressure cookers, 4 weeks sprint, where I bring in internal and external people. And first of all, capture all the crowdsource the knowledge internally, because the sales know something, the marketing knows something, people in product, the product manager knows something, people in support know something, customer success manager know a lot of things. And you get already a pretty good picture about what the customer is about. Then I do a lot of research around the customer websites. So what do their customers that they want more of? So the ideal customer. And that's typically something that's a gut feel. Okay. So they give me the list, and then I start looking at their websites and okay, what is it? What do they say on their about page? What do they promise their customer?
Interesting.
What do they say? For example, when they hire people, what their organization is really all about, and you learn a lot from that in terms of what they stand for and not what they value. Of course, they sometimes they position their the values on the website, what they promote internally. I mean, how the culture is really fitted together, whether they are really collaborative, whether they're like top down. At some point, you start to connect dots. I did a project for a company called Sana Commerce a couple of years ago for repositioning them. They've been around. I mean, good example of a company that has product market fit. Had a lot of product market fit. They were in business for maybe 8-9 years already, and they thought that's an e-commerce platform, that they were the shortcut to e-commerce because they had embedded their e-commerce platform inside an ERP, either SAP or Microsoft. And as a consequence, you didn't have to do the integrations anymore, faster to get up and running. Their customers couldn't care less about that. So when I started to research them, and I saw companies like Michelin and Royal Brinkmann, a large company in the horticulture industry in the Netherlands. I spoke to a number of building material companies, really big ones from Mexico. And when I started to look at them at the table, I figured out that okay, there's multiple verticals here, and they're all selling to B2B, and they all have been around for quite a while. And that was something that I initially was like, I saw it, but I didn't just kind of look at it. But what I figured out is that the majority of their customers were more than 25 years old, sometimes 50, sometimes 100 years old. And their business was really all about building long-term relationships. And when I started talking to them about why that solution, and I did do these interviews in depth, they said it's not about, getting the shortcut to e-commerce. That's only a one-time moment. What we are all about is long-term relations. And when we make a promise, we have to keep that promise. And that's what these guys do like no one else, because they have architected the product in a different way. So they're remarkable. They're remarkable from an architecture perspective because they're different from how Shopify and Magento and Wiz and all the others are doing it, because they're integrating on top of an ERP and they are inside it. So whenever a customer is looking at the website, or they're calling them right at the desk and say, do you have this available? The answer is the same. Price is the same. The stock is the same. The transportation costs are calculated the same. All of these B2B rules that they have agreed upon, all the same. When these companies are on the building side, for example, building material company that sell to big projects that are building big condos and office buildings, when these companies buy from them and they say, I want to have a truck with these stones, and I want to have another truck with these windows, and I want to have it tomorrow at 4, they can guarantee it's going to be there at 4 and exactly in the right amount. And that's what these companies are making their margin on, because they can utilize their whole team to just finish the job.
Yeah.
And that is powerful, and when you can support and amplify what makes your customer special, that's what I'm trying to look for in how we segment, how we position, and the value proposition.
What advice would you have to, let's say, a CEO of maybe a young SaaS company or maybe an agency who has taken a sort of a generalist, non-differentiated approach to their product? Let's say it's a horizontal product, and hey, everybody needs a website, or hey, everybody needs, a CRM, and they're thinking about taking more of a specialized vertical, maybe a verticalized approach to their business. What
Mhm.
advice would you have for them in that moment when they're trying to figure out, like, what's the first step to take to start specializing their product or service?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter whether it's verticalizing or whether it's niching down, but it's getting specific and
Okay.
starting. Well, I mean, first chapter in my book is remarkable software companies acknowledge they cannot please everyone. So try to please someone really, really well, so that what you do in their eyes is remarkable, because they will help you find another one and another one, another one, and there will be enough. Because in the SaaS world, it's always, you start with an idea, and then I mean, a lot of that, and luckily the funding market is a little bit cooled down right now.
Yeah.
But they started to sell their idea, and then the first question these investors ask, "Oh, what is it? What is the size of your total addressable market?" And they want it always to make it as big as possible. Oh,
The
it's
bigger the better, right?
it's yeah, exactly, 40 billion, growing 35% CAGR, and no, I mean, fact that this market is fantastically big doesn't mean that they're going to buy you, you know. And I'd rather focus within that large TAM on a subsegment of a segment of a subsegment, where I can actually start scoring 8 out of 10 deals. Then I need 15 leads, and then I've got 12 customers. Year
Right.
done,
Yeah.
right? And that comes down again to, yeah, acknowledge that you cannot please everyone. So who are the ones where you can make a true difference? And that goes back to starting with the triangle I'm writing about in my book. Make the list of problems that these customers have. How valuable are they? What are which one are the most critical? And on top of that, where can you make a difference
Mm.
at this stage with the product or the services that you have? And then next year, it might be different because your product has evolved. Okay, we do it again. It's not that not set in stone.
Yes.
Well, yeah, of course, ideally it would be set in stone, and sometimes it's a little. If you have product market fit and your products, your core differentiation doesn't change every year again, then okay, that's stable. But if you're really in your infancies and your product is just getting out of like almost a point 0.8 version, beta release, and that's a different thing.
Sure. It's much more organic at that
But
point.
start there, zoom in. What is a section of that market that you can own and dominate
Mm.
with the thing that you have? In my book, I'm talking about a pretty interesting company from South Africa, uh, Arrow. Oh, I forgot the name. Anyway, it will come to mind. It's a company that started their business as a drone service, taking pictures of farms.
Yes.
And
You mentioned this. Yes.
exactly. And then they realize, okay, yeah, having a picture of the crop that you have, it might be valuable to some of them to see, okay, what's going on, because these are really, really big there. Takes you 3 days to drive around the farm. Um, and then they realize, okay, there needs to be something that we can do with those pictures. For example, okay, where do you need to focus your time and effort in terms of it's too dry, it's too wet, there's a disease here, disease there. And they realized, okay, we can do that, and we have to hone in on a particular type of crop. And the market was, I mean, everyone was, I think it was I forget what the crop was, but they started to focus on citrus, which is only 10% of the market, but they nailed it, and they became dominant there. And that's where the whole thing started to escalate, and they started to grow outside of South Africa and so on. But it's a good example again. They could do all of those type of crops, but they focused on making it really, really special for one type, and that's where that was noticed. I mean, talking also about this horizontal product that we had at Unit 4, it was technically a product that if you run a company, you need to do your finance, you could work with it. But then there are 1,000 options.
Right.
So for us, it was okay. How many deals do we really need to make a fantastic year? It was about 100. Mid-market, large type, with a particular average deal size. And then we find the best 100.
That's it.
And what are the characteristics of those companies? And if next year we have a new module or we have a new product, we adjust it again.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Ton. What's your motivation?
My motivation? I mean, my mission at the end is to help as many as possible B2B SaaS companies stand out in their marketplace. That's why I wrote my book. That's why I write a daily email. Yeah, and that's what I offer my services. But it's not all about that. And you can see that on my website. There's a lot of free resources there because I believe if there's more products out there that become remarkable, first of all, we all have a better, we have more joy. Yeah, more joy in our work because we get to use those products.
Yeah,
and everybody wins with that. Because I've been talking about financial software and payroll software. My God, dull software. There's nothing sexy about that. But I mean, I have seen companies like Gusto, for example. I talk about them in my book as well. They make payroll sexy.
Yeah.
At least when I wrote about it in my book, I haven't looked at them in a while again.
Yeah, but no, I use them. I just got an email. I got paid today, so
exactly. And it's like, oh yeah,
yeah. They make it fun.
They make it fun.
Yeah.
So, and that's remarkable. People talk about it.
Ton, where could people find out more about you? Where could they find your book? What's a good way for people to get in touch with you?
Go to my website, valueinspiration.com. And otherwise, you just search my name on LinkedIn, Ton Dobbe. That's pronunciation. And I am always on LinkedIn every single day because I post every day there. And happy to start conversations there.
Beautiful. That is awesome. You do such important work for SaaS businesses, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. I know the listeners have gotten a ton of value. So thank you so much for coming on today.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, folks, that's it for today. I'm Corey Quinn, and I hope you join me again next time for the Vertical Go-to-Market podcast. If you receive value from this show, I would love a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.